alternative. They've included elements of Libyan society that have long been marginalized, the intelligentsia, the educated, the youth, women. I'm quite impressed and I'm hopeful.
Tell me this, Tariq, if everybody hated Gaddafi as much as they say they do now, how come he managed 42 years in power?
Fear, brutality.
But that fear would have existed a month ago, wouldn't it?
It was there a month ago, but I think seeing events in Egypt, events in Tunisia, the fear factor was taken out of the equation gradually. The effects of the images coming out of Tunis and Egypt also removed the factor of the intimidation by the security forces.
On the basis of the worst that can happen to us is that we can die, which might be better than living the way we live.
Absolutely, and many reports, numerous reports and analysis coming out of Libya in 2010 suggested that the country was boiling underneath and that the regime in its chaos, corruption, was reaching a critical point where it became ripe for a kind of unrest.
Where did Gaddafi, if he did, where did he miscalculate?
He miscalculated in the extent to which he thought Libya was an exception to what was happening in Egypt and Tunisia, and that the outside world, once had signed to normalization pact in 2003, would stand with him for the sake of oil and the financial assets he possessed until the very end.
Just give us a quick summary, Tariq, if you would, on the most significant developments you think have come out of Libya in the last 24 hours, and then perhaps if we've got time I'd like to ask you a question about Yemen. Yeah. But Libya first.
Decisive, swift international reaction of the highest order, and one that we haven't seen in a very long period of time. That is on the international scene. Two, a clear statement by the outside world also that Gaddafi has to go, that he needs to step down. Domestically, it might be a worrying sign, but consolidation within the East and circling of the cities by Gaddafi's security and military remnants in the West, that suggests that there's a standoff that is shaping up right now.
I'll have to leave Yemen till a little bit later. Thanks very much, Tariq Youssef from the Dubai School of Government.
Pleasure.
Thank you. OK, off to Europe again. Relations with Tunisia's ousted president still causing some problems for politicians in France. She's paid the price, Felicity, hasn't she?
She certainly has. Thanks, David. Yes, the French Prime Minister François Fillon says he had no choice but to drop the country's foreign minister from his cabinet. Michelle Alliot-Marie forced to resign from her post during a cabinet reshuffle on Sunday. Fillon said she had drawn too much criticism for her links with the ousted Tunisian leader, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. Elsewhere, the fraud trial of the Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi resumed in Milan on Monday. He's facing charges of tax fraud and embezzlement in connection with television rights traded by his media company. The trial resumed after Italy's constitutional court stripped Berlusconi of his immunity. He'll also face a separate trial on charges of paying for sex with a minor. Now, a court in the UK has convicted a former British Airways employee of plotting to blow up an aeroplane. Prosecutors say the computer specialist Rajeb Karim planned the attack with the radical American cleric Anwar al-Awlaki. 31-year-old Karim was found guilty on 4 counts of engaging in preparation for terrorist attacks. The British fashion designer John Galliano arrived at a police station in Paris on Monday to answer questions about an incident in which he's alleged to have made anti-Semitic remarks. Galliano's lawyers say he denies the claims of shouting racist abuse at a couple in a bar in the Marais district of Paris last Thursday. Within hours, Dior suspended Galliano, who's been the company's main designer for more than 10 years. Let's briefly return to the events in Libya. And one person who's been by Muammar Gaddafi's side for almost 10 years is his Ukrainian nurse. But she's one of the latest of his entourage to desert the Libyan leader. Neve Barker has more.
Returning to Ukraine after 9 years at Gaddafi's side, 38-year-old Galina Kolodnitskaya is met by family at Kiev airport. She arrived with hundreds of foreign evacuees. Her story distinctly different from the many others fleeing the violence in Libya. In these undated pictures, Kolodnitskaya stands close to the heart of the Gaddafi regime. She was one of 4 Ukrainian nurses taking care of him. But a US diplomatic cable published by WikiLeaks late last year claimed the Libyan leader was deeply attached to Kolodnitskaya. The cable described her as a voluptuous blonde who always travelled with the Gaddafi as only she knew his routine. It's believed the two may have been romantically involved. Back in Ukraine, Kolodnitskaya is avoiding public attention, all while Gaddafi's leadership teeters precariously. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
All right, that's it from here in Europe for the moment. Back now to Doha and David.
Thank you very much indeed. New Zealand's Prime Minister says it's going to be a massive repair bill, around about $15 billion to put right everything that's happened after the two recent earthquakes. Last week's in Christchurch, the death toll now around about 148 and 50 more missing. There have been funerals for some of the victims on Monday. Large parts of Christchurch simply reduced to rubble. And the people of Chile, while remembering their massive earthquake a year on, thousands of families still living in temporary shelters. Here's Mark Orchard.
A pre-dawn vigil at the epicenter of the magnitude 8.8 earthquake. The keynote to a national day of mourning for all the victims and their families. In the coastal town of Constitución, bells tolled and the names of the dead were read out.
To be here along with all the other families is incredibly painful. Incredible, but you need to know how to stand up.
President Sebastián Pinera has been touring the disaster zone with the message that his government is sparing no expense to rebuild.
As we observe the first anniversary of the catastrophe which struck our country, the reconstruction has been solid, and we have achieved very significant progress and accomplishments.
The country's main highways are nearly back to what they were before the quake. But building new housing for the displaced has been slower. In this camp, residents who lost all their possessions are still waiting for a grant to build a new neighborhood.
We are suffering here. We don't have water for the house. The truth is that there's been a lot of shamelessness here. That's the only way to describe it.
We are all suffering from depression here. This is going nowhere.
Opposition politicians blame the lack of progress on the right-of-centre government's decision to privatise most of the construction work.
The government cannot continue to accept poor workmanship in the service of the public. The methods they have been employing in the Bio region are absolutely outside the law and public morality.
Pinera concedes that the work is running behind schedule, but his government says it will accelerate the outsourcing of work to private companies. Mark Orchard, Al Jazeera.
Coming up on this news hour, who's taken one of these home?
And the Oscar goes to Colin Firth.
Natalie Portman, The King's Speech.
Well, for every winner, there has to be a number of losers. Who missed out at the Oscars? We'll tell you in just a moment. And Zimbabwe in the Cricket World Cup playing Canada. What about a surprise?
Business Latest is brought to you by Catalum, the most efficient and environmentally friendly aluminium smelter. Business Latest is brought to you by Catalum, the most efficient and environmentally friendly aluminium smelter.
Information travels in many ways. Knowledge passes in an instant.
If you want to communicate with those shaping the headlines, this is your chance to ask questions directly to the people making the news. Riz Khan, at this time on Al Jazeera.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download Al Jazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovis store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from Al Jazeera English. See the world in real time. Al Jazeera Mobile.
Here's Sana with the sport.
Thank you very much, David. Well, West Indies fast bowler Kemar Roach has become the 6th person in World Cup history to take a hat-trick. It came in the Windies' 215-run victory over the Netherlands in Group B. Roach took 6 for 27 in total as the Netherlands were bowled out for 115. Earlier, former skipper Chris Gayle hit 80 as the West Indies made 330 for 8 of their 50 overs. In the early game on Monday, Zimbabwe thrashed Canada in Group A by 175 runs in Nagpur. Zimbabwe batted first and hit an impressive 298 for 9 of their 50 overs. In reply, Canada never really got going. Ray Price taking 3 wickets for 16 to help bowl them out for just 123. England all-rounder Tim Brosnan has been officially reprimanded by the match referee for smashing the stumps after being bowled out during his side's tied match against India. The game itself has been described as one of the greatest in history of the World Cup. And as Andy Richardson reports, it may well have breathed new life into the 50-over format.
It was the match all India seemed to have been waiting for. The co-hosts taking on England, and a feeling this tournament was now really lifting off. Indian fans hoping their side could take another step to becoming the first team to win the world title in front of home support. India batted first, and once again it was Sachin Tendulkar leading the way for his country, easing his way to a 47th one-day century. He scored 120 as India took control. MS Dhoni and Yuvraj Singh then paired up to inflict yet more damage on England's attack. England did hit back with late wickets, but India's total of 338 looked formidable. In reply, England captain Andrew Strauss looked more than up for the task. He settled in to score his first ever World Cup century. England in with a chance. Ably assisted by Ian Bell, Strauss's England were making India look old and ordinary in the field. But late wickets were then to tumble, England stumbling when in sight of victory. 14 were needed off the final over, 2 off the last ball, only 1 was scored, so the match finished in a tie. A pulsating game, finishing with points shared.
I think both the teams will be a bit disappointed, but still, they will be a bit relieved to take 1 point out of which, because I think both the team in this game, were facing defeat at a point of time.
We've got to celebrate the fact it was an unbelievable game of cricket. Probably the best advert for 50-over format you could possibly get. So, some great performances on both sides. Both sides will be partly happy, partly sad.
Right off the 50-over game at your peril. Only this format can produce the ebb and flow of momentum and tension we've seen in this match. India's bowling looked as fragile as their batting looked flawless. England will feel they should have pushed themselves over the winning line. One thing's for sure, this Cricket World Cup is well and truly alive. Andy Richardson, Al Jazeera, Bengaluru.
Football in Spain, Valencia remain in 3rd spot after coming back from a goal down to win at Athletic Bilbao. Bilbao took the lead through their highly rated striker Fernando Llorente, 26-year-old, adding a few more zeros to his club's $61 million valuation of him. Valencia didn't respond until the 71st minute as Juan Mata completed a flowing move for the equaliser. And with 9 minutes to go, they had their winner, new signing Jonas, making the final score 2-1 to Valencia. In England, Birmingham City won their first domestic trophy in almost half a century thanks to a shock victory over Arsenal in the English League Cup final. A goal in the last minute giving them victory in a dramatic final at the Wembley Stadium. Guy McCree reports.
The first major silverware of the season in England up for grabs at Wembley. Few observers gave relegation-threatened Birmingham City a hope against Arsenal, but it was they who took the lead on 28 minutes. Giant striker Nikola Zigic able to convert Roger Johnson's flick-on from a corner kick.